Well, what do you make of what Walt's saying?
Listen, I'm going to start off by saying, listen, Walt Frazier was one of the best, right?
Right.
It's a funny thing. It's when you start getting older as a person, people
they forget they were.
You forget you were younger, like that. You've made mistakes. That wasn't a mistake actually, because LeBron always sits at the end of the bench. He's talking to Tyson Chandler. If you look at the whole scenario,
he's got a trainer he's talking to too.
Yeah, everybody's like moving, and what do you want LeBron to do? You want him to kumbaya with the guys that are on the bench that are literally standing up together, looking in the stands? I have no clue what you want him to do. But it's like Clyde or Charles. It's like guys who really, like you can get caught up in the narrative. You get caught up in the narrative.
And right now the narrative is to bash LeBron, everything's his fault.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that's become the avalanche. And my takeaway, I'll throw something at you that I think is a problem. Think about this. This is a problem, and you can't blame LeBron for all this. Mm-hmm. Every Laker in the last 4 years that leaves is better. D'Angelo Russell is an all-star. Julius Randle, career highs.
Right.
Brook Lopez, best shooting year.
Right.
Zubac to the Clippers. He's their starting center, and they're playing great basketball.
Right.
By the way, even like Larry Nance Jr. to Cleveland. It's the best he's ever played.
Right.
To me, you can't blame LeBron or even Luke Walton for all that stuff.
Right.
Lou Williams had him, let him go, crushing it for the Clippers, setting an NBA bench record.
Right.
The Lakers' problems to me feel inside the
front
building.
Office.
It's front office.
It's front office. That has nothing to do with LeBron James. That's front office. And because for a while, who I love and adore so much, Kobe Bryant, he demanded a high standard. So when other stars will come there, it's not easy to play with Kobe Bryant, especially when he demands so much.
Right.
So it kind of scared a lot of free agents off.
It did.
That's a lot of pressure. So don't blame LeBron James for the things that he's done. They picked that team for LeBron James. Mind you, they were in fourth place at one point in time before he got injured. But, I mean, come on.
The narrative now has become LeBron's on top of the world. This has been a bad season, and so everything's LeBron's fault. All I would say about that video was he's talking to the Laker trainer, and he's talking to Tyson Chandler.
Right.
He's not mingling with James Dolan and fans at the Garden in New York.
So last year when they were playing, remember he had the water bottle and he was playing around with that was in New York. Guess where he was at? End of the bench. He was at the end of the bench.
And that team went to the finals.
I don't understand it. You got to pick something. It's like Obama with the tan suit. You got to pick something.
I remember that. We used to be tough on our presidents because of a tan suit.
A tan suit.
That's a good call. So saying this about Westbrook, I'm seen as a Westbrook hater. There are players who are great talent but not great leaders. Big Ben increasingly feels like that. Great talent, not always the greatest leader. Barry Bonds had that feel. A little bit of A-Rod to that. Kobe, great talent, not always great leader. With Russell Westbrook, Cuttino, I believe tension is contagious. And when I watch him this weekend, Saturday night, Warriors in town, you add a little elevation of emotion to a game, and it looked like once again, Westbrook is unhinged. How in the world do you do that to Klay Thompson? One of the most decent, quiet, non-confrontational guys in the league. Didn't it look like Westbrook just, again, melted down this weekend?
I mean,
look at this. Watch this.
Well, yeah, it was great defense.
Like, what is that?
Well, that's a personal thing between Westbrook and Westbrook's ego. He's like that regardless if it was Klay Thompson, whoever. Now the referee missed the call, and Steve Francis used to do that.
Steve Francis.
He used to do things like that where he's so passionate, he kicked the ball in the stands in Utah. Like, you just do certain things. Now, Westbrook always plays with the chip on his shoulder. If you take that from him, down what you have.
But my point with Steve Francis is that tension's contagious. Like, Russ is so tightly wound that to some degree, this is why the Thunder get tight in playoff games. It's pins and needles.
Right.
You know, like if you're in a family, I can't speak for anybody else's family, and this was not my family, but I've heard about families like this where the dad is super intense and the dad is loud and the dad is sort of over the top, and everybody in the house is walking on eggshells because the dad is intense.
Yeah.
I feel with Russell sometimes he is so intense, you kind of as a franchise Coach kind of walks on eggshells.
But I think we should pause it for a second when it comes to that. And the reason we're not to interrupt, the reason why I say that is because this year he sacrificed a lot of his ego and his personality for Paul George and the betterment of the team. So let's just wait when the playoffs come and see if he does those things that you're saying, because he has a history of that. And usually I always go with the phrase is, if you show me who you are, I'm going to believe you. And lately, in the past few years, that's who he has been. But he didn't have Paul. He ran off KD. Now you have Paul George. Last year, it was uncomfortable. This year, let's figure out what you're going to do. Now, if you start these antics and shooting the ball more than Paul George,
because now we're
trying to take over.
This is what worries me. Before the trading deadline, Westbrook was fine. He was a good teammate. And I kept saying, Joey was here. I said, let's get closer to the playoffs. I'm going to judge it because this is just the way Westbrook's DNA is.
Right.
You start adding tension, Saturday night, playoffs, fourth quarter, Warriors come to town.
Take it personal one-on-one, opposing team.
All right, let's talk, if we can. KD didn't play, and the Warriors go. They beat Houston on the road, and they beat OKC on the road. Who's the best player you ever played with?
The best player I've ever played with. That's interesting. Well, on his downside, Chris Webber was amazing.
Okay, Chris Webber was amazing.
Amazing, Chris Webber. I want to say Steve Francis was really good.
So those are like big-time talents. Could you make the argument, because I watched the Warriors the last 3 years, they're 26-4 with Steph and no Kevin Durant. Yet they're pretty average, 23-15 with KD and no Steph.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying the Warriors are better off without Kevin Durant, but I look at those numbers. They average 12, almost 11 points a game more when KD's out the floor. When you were playing with Webber and Francis, a great player, sometimes, Cuttino, does a team rely on him? Like he bails you out. The star bails you out. And you become kind of beholden or dependent on the star to bail you out. Did you do that with Francis? Did you do it with Webber?
Well, with Francis and I, we just traded off a lot. It's just that his talent level was so amazing. We traded off a lot. So not with Steve, but with Chris, because of the offense and where it started at in the high post, Chris dictated the whole game offensively for all of us, so it was easier. So, yes, you defer to Chris because he was more of the point forward in this offense. I think with Stephen Curry is the most important player on their team.
Yes. Not the best, but the most important.
He's the most important. And then to me, the most important is actually the most valuable. He's the most valuable one on that team. He's not on that team. They don't do as well as they do. He does so many different things offensively, which causes chaos. Now, in causing that chaos, he may not be great defensively, but mentally it tires you off when you're on the defense trying to chase around this one person and everybody else gets open. That's the key to it. Now, Kevin Durant is amazing. MVPs, this, that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it was harder for him in OKC. Here, it's a cakewalk because you have so many amazing players, starting with Stephen Curry.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like sometimes I find when you have a star receiver in the NFL that you almost feel like you have to go to him. Like there are times I felt like Tom Brady, it's like, okay, I got to get Randy Moss involved.
Right.
You know, Calvin Johnson in Detroit's one of the best players ever. Matt Stafford and the Lions it was like they almost on third down felt like we have to go to Calvin or it's not good football.
Right.
He left, they got better.
Right.
And even the offense got better. So I do find sometimes that Kevin Durant's the best bailout scorer maybe in NBA history. He's an automatic bucket, and sometimes you kind of depend on him. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.